Greetings, humans of the internet, and welcome once again to Bowtie Talks. I, of course, am your excellent host, Luke Johnson, coming to you, as usual, from my undisclosed location in Midwest USA with some more historical insights. And because we covered barbecue last week, I figured it'd be a good time to discuss another event that also involves food, and that is picnicking. Because, as I said about barbecue, it just doesn't refer to the food, it also refers to the experience. And picnicking is definitely an experience to those of us who have done it. So please, buckle up, join me on this trip as we discuss the history of American picnicking. People have been eating outdoors for 500 years or possibly even more. However, the French term picnic, and that's spelled P-I-Q-U-E hyphen Nique, first appeared in print in 1694, and it referred to an indoor potluck-type dinner. Outdoor dining, however, most likely has its origins in medieval hunting feasts, which have been documented in paintings and tapestries from the period. And the French term was adopted and adapted by the British to refer to these outdoor eating experiences. However, the term can be found in an earlier work, which was a burlesque satire on the perceived hypocrisy of the Fronde, which was an insurrection against French absolutism. And the main character was Picnic, spelled the way I previously mentioned. And picnicking really became a pastime, excuse me, I had a little frog in my throat, during the 18th century. And it was a favorite pastime of the aristocracy. And these were purely indoor affairs held at home or in hired rooms and were contrasted with elaborate painting. And attendees were still required to contribute, but they could bring either a dish or drink or pay a share of the cost. By the early 1800s, however, the definition had changed, and picnics were firmly located out, and with the Industrial Revolution on its hinges, more people wanted to return to the great outdoors. And many of them did so by picnicking. And early picnickers liked grand views and picturesque settings, including new urban parks that offered a kind of pseudo-countryside for people eager to recreate a pastoral scene. They were even prescribed as a way to reach health. I mean, what could be more healthful than a wholesome afternoon outdoors? 19th century literature often described picnics with rugs and wicker baskets by the riverside or on hilltops. The aim may have been to be carefree, but the menus were definitely not. One example can be found in Mrs. Beeton's Book of Household Management, published in London around 1880. And her picnic luncheon for 20 people featured lobster, roast fowl, veal pies, champagne, and a gallon of strawberries. And picnics would later go on to become an important part of rural society. Church, school, or community picnics in more isolated areas often served as the only opportunities for women to socialize with other women. Wives and mothers took it upon themselves to organize these picnics around holidays or anniversaries to ensure that they had plenty of time to look forward to throughout the year. American picnicking really came into its own during the 1890s. Families would pack a basket full of portable foods, spread a blanket or a rug on the ground, and eat in a shady place. Travelers picnicked by stopping on the roadside to enjoy lunch from a picnic basket. And most early picnic baskets were woven out of wicker, ash, or other similar basket material. They had a hinged lid and often had swing handles for carrying. Inside, there were places to store the necessary utensils for eating, as well as places for food. And by the turn of the 20th century, picnic baskets contained accessories that might even include a checkered tablecloth and matching utensils. This now gives me a chance to discuss some of the places where people often picnicked. And believe it or not, one of the most popular places to picnic was in a cemetery. During the 19th century, especially during its later years, snacking in cemeteries happened all throughout the United States because many places still lacked proper recreational areas, and many people would have full picnics in their local cemeteries. One reason this trend may have came on was because epidemics were raging across the country. Yellow fever and cholera were very common, and children passed away before turning 10, and many women died during childbirth, and so death was a constant for many families. And in cemeteries, people could talk and eat with family and friends, both living and deceased. A young man in 1884 explained why he chose to eat in a cemetery: because we are going to keep Thanksgiving with our father as though he was alive and hearty this day last year. Another reason it may have become so popular to picnic in cemeteries was the rural cemetery movement. American and European graveyards had long been dreary places on church grounds full of reminders not to sin. These new cemeteries were often located outside of city centers and were made to look like gardens for relaxation and beauty. Flower motifs had replaced skull and crossbones, and the public was welcomed to enjoy the grounds. And another popular form of picnicking is tailgating. Starting in late summer and continuing through early winter. Temporary tent cities appear in stadium parking lots across the country. A haze of charcoal smoke fills the air along with laughter and the aroma of grilled hamburgers and hot dogs, or in my case, bratwursts. And I have seen some people take full smokers to tailgates as well. But believe it or not, people have been tailgating long before American baseball and American football ever entered the public mind. And we have the American Civil War to thank for tailgating. It happened on Sunday, July 21st, 1861, when the residents of Washington, D.C. packed picnic baskets and loaded into carriages and buggies for a day in the Virginia countryside. And rather than listen to the sounds of nature, they followed the sounds of artillery to watch the first major battle of the Civil War at the First Battle of Bull Run. Union Captain John Tidball had seen a throng of sightseers and peddlers, quote, in carts loaded with pies and other edibles. The food was more out of necessity than frivolity, because the 25-mile carriage ride from the nation's capital took at least 7 hours. The onlookers hoped the visiting squad would score a quick victory in what would later be known as the picnic battle. Positioned miles away from the action safely, onlookers watched through opera glasses and complained of the obstructed views from the smoking trees. However, it was no picnic for the Union Army, although future Vice President Henry Wilson did hand out leftover sandwiches to the men in blue as they scurried away in defeat. Tailgating would later happen again on November 6, 1869, when the College of New Jersey, now called Princeton University, and Rutgers University met in what is considered to be the first recorded game of American football. And the football fans participated in a party that accompanied the game. Tailgating would reach another milestone during the early 1900s when automobiles became more common. The schools that dominated college football, Princeton, Yale, and Harvard, also had wealthy students who were among the few who could afford the new cars. Car registrations surpassed 100,000 for the first time, and the 32,000 fans traveling to New Haven, Connecticut for the Harvard-Yale game included motorists who indulged in what might be called the first pre-game tailgate. The New York Times reported, the open field about the grounds were simply black with machines parked together in such a hopeless mass to make it seem impossible for one ever to find his own once more. The newspaper declared the hungry fans arriving by train, quote, gazed with envious eyes as they neared the field at smart parties of automobiles, eating tempting viands, never heard that word before, that had been brought in hampers, spread out in picnic fashion on a tablecloth laid upon the ground. And as more and more people bought cars, it became possible for fans from larger geographic areas to travel to games. And during the 1920s, colleges like Michigan and Ohio State responded to this new demand by constructing large stadiums that could hold tens of thousands of fans. As it became more difficult for restaurants in college towns to feed the big crowds, more fans held trunk picnics and ate on blankets in parking lots. And following the introduction of wooden-sided station wagons during the 1930s, fans used the rear fold-down tailgates as seats or buffet tables. And so, pre-game partying became known as tailgating. And while some credit Yale sports information Charlie Loftus, it is unclear to this day who, if anyone, really coined the term. Tailgating would see new development during the 1950s thanks to new innovations like portable grills and plastic coolers, which became mass-produced for the first time. Hot grills and cold beer replaced wicker baskets filled with wine bottles and sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. And suburban grilling culture began to grow after World War II and became as much a part of the American dream as a green lawn and white picket fence. And automobile ownership exploded after World War II. with the number of registrations doubling from 28 million in 1946 to 56 million in 1957. And as car culture continued to become ingrained in the United States in the 1970s, NFL teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, Philadelphia Eagles, New York Giants, and New England Patriots moved from stadiums in city neighborhoods to new ones with ample parking. And because of a lack of public transportation to some of the new venues, fans drove to the stadiums, which were ringed by acres of asphalt instead of vibrant neighborhoods with local restaurants and bars. And giving the new venues a lack of viable dining alternatives and the rising cost of stadium food, tailgating spread across the NFL, and some teams even promoted parking lot parties and barbecues as part of the game experience. And in 1973, the San Francisco 49ers even gave fans booklets with recipes, which were written by wives of the players. And with football season soon being upon us, I'm sure many of you out there listening are probably planning on tailgating as soon as school and college football begin again. My brother Clayton, who was on here before, always does a tailgate in October for the first homecoming game at our college. We both attended the same college. What college? Not telling you. The last thing I want is for some paranoid fan to stalk me. But anyway, and unfortunately, it looks as if time has once again came upon us. So it looks like we're going to have to sign off. And what have we learned today? Well, I think we've learned that American picnicking has definitely changed, like all things do. And I think we have learned that people can often find times to gather, even during dark circumstances. After all, just look at the first tailgate, which happened during the Civil War at the Battle of Bull Run. I can kind of actually see the scene now. Oh, honey, look at that! That man just had a cannonball hit his leg. 4-1 for the Union! Or how about this? I could see some of the men placing bets. All right. I'm placing 10 on the boys in blue. How about you? I'm going back to gray on this one, pal. And then when the Union did unfortunately lose the battle, I could see some businessmen say, all right, here you go. Here's the money. And with that, I now say goodbye and God bless.